Welcome, everyone, to the January edition of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. Archbishop, it's 2021.
Wow. Happy New Year to you, Brian,
Happy New Year.
And to all of our viewing audience.
It's nice to get 2020 behind us a little bit as
sure
we move
is.
forward. We have a really fine show planned for today. We're going to talk about 2021 and what's ahead in the new year. Second segment, Archbishop has his traditional interview with a special guest, Chris Graney, and you'll learn all about him in just a few minutes. And the third segment, we're going to return to what we've done in the past, which we have some viewer questions. Not going to stump you, but I have some good questions to ask you in the third segment. So Archbishop, why don't you help us with what's ahead for the church, our community in 2021?
Brian, thanks. I don't think I'm the only one looking at 2021 and saying, what does our present and future look like? Yeah. And so I've been given some thoughts to it, and in fact, I shared with you a few of these items. I don't know if we'll get to all five that I mentioned, but I hope we will. But the first one, I think, is really an important one, and that is, I get it that we're still in the midst of physical distancing. We need to take seriously COVID-19, but we all know that we're social beings. And so, in some ways, physical distancing, yes. Social distancing, no. We're social beings. So how can we, in a sense, reawaken, especially in the gift of faith, that idea of how do we communicate? How do we learn from what we've experienced in 2020? But how do we reawaken in ourselves, I think, the engagement within our community and the living of our faith?
Very good. The arrival of vaccine and all the different things that are kind of help us address the challenges of 2020. But one of the challenges was even the tension that grew up in the community about how people communicate and interact with each other. What about that?
Yeah, I think we're going to learn, of course, that the virtual communication that we've learned to do the good things will remain with us.
Very good.
That part will stay. But the parts that I think we have to be careful. People have said, I think Bishop Medley said once, he got off a Zoom meeting and he said, boy, I yearn for the real presence. And he wasn't talking about the Eucharistic presence, but he was, in a sense he was.
Yeah.
He was talking about the fact that there's something about face-to-face contact.
Very good.
And that changes the dynamic. So I think that's something that I hope within the Archdiocese we'll be able to engage more and more participants. And in some ways, maybe people who in the past were spectators might say, no, I'm ready to participate in the life of my faith. So that's the first one.
I think there's some yearning for that. So
yeah, I think
hope
so
there's
too.
out there. What else? What else do you see?
Well, another one, we talk about the civic community. Mm-hmm. And Pope Francis, in his recent encyclical from last October, Fratelli Tutti, talks about true dialogue. And he says, yes, true dialogue means we search for the truth. There's no doubt about that. But he said, we need in the midst of that to be great respecters of the person, even the person we disagree with. We may not agree with everything that person says or does, but we do agree with the fact that that person is made in the image and likeness of God and of great dignity. So I think following the cue, if you would, from Pope Francis, I think we're looking at promoting true dialogue. So in other words, we come together socially, but not just to have a good time, but actually to enter into dialogue. Our Holy Father uses the word encounter. And to enter into an encounter with others, even with people with whom we disagree. So that's I think the second one that I would say.
Yeah, because there's certainly tension as people interact with each other sometimes, because people often identify their differences first. Okay, what else?
Well, let me take this also from Fratelli Tutti, because I've really enjoyed this encyclical. It's about becoming a neighbor. Sometimes when I was growing up, I would say, well, my neighbor is the person who lives next door to me, or even Cain and Abel. Who is my neighbor, was what Cain said. But our Holy Father, looking at the Good Samaritan, said, being a neighbor is a responsibility.
Okay.
And so what does it mean to become a neighbor to another person? Go back to the difference between being a spectator and being a participant. And so I think there's a great call for us to be engaged in taking up the fact that each one of us is neighbor to the person next to us. And whether it's an issue of the neighbor in the womb or a person of a different color, different age, we have a responsibility to reach out to others and to become a neighbor to that other person, to share responsibility in the life of other people.
So let me ask you, just go one more. So who is my neighbor?
Yeah. Of course, the answer becomes with social friendship. There is no person on earth who is not my neighbor.
Wow.
The question becomes, do I keep that in the abstract, or do I put a face to it? And in a sense, what am I called to do in interest of my neighbor?
Very good.
Yeah.
We have time for one or two more of you. What's going to happen this year?
Well, you know what? Let me say this one thing because it flows from it. I think it's a great call for lay leadership.
Okay.
I think in many ways there have been, Second Vatican Council was a great push for saying the baptismal call is an important and essential call, a call to holiness and a call to engagement in the world. But that has gone up and down, and sometimes people, as I joke with people when they say, you know what the church should do? And I say, I think you mean, you know what the Archbishop should do. But in fact, the church involves every baptized person. So I think that 2021 is going to be a great call for lay leadership, both within the church and within the world, within our civil community. And it's going to be a task for us to call forth, to help equip and shape, and then to support people in that, obviously in the family, in their workplace, and of course in church environment.
You know, we've seen a lot of lay leadership. We've had a lot of guests on the show over the many months from that. But this is a call to not just those who work for the church. This is a call to all members of the faithful.
It is, and sometimes we make that mistake of thinking that somehow the call is only to promote what is visibly connected to the church. But the truth is that we are called to renew the face of the earth. It's Christ's call to renew the face of the earth, you know. I'll give you my last one if I could.
Sure.
And that is also comes from Fratelli Tutti. And it was our Holy Father talking about the difference between a dream and a mirage. And I think we know that in a desert, a mirage is that we're almost convinced that there's water there, and as we get closer, it's completely dry. Whereas a dream, which was so much part of, I think, sacred scripture, is about a vision and hope for what not only is, but what can be. And so I think 2021 will be a wonderful opportunity for us to be involved in some exciting things within the church and within the world.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about and look forward to as the new year evolves in front of us. So thanks, Archbishop. Well, folks, that was the end of segment one. Stay tuned for just a moment here. You're going to have an opportunity to meet a special guest with Archbishop Kurtz. We'll be right back.